Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be busting some menopause myths. Now there are a lot of myths surrounding menopause and they're generally not very helpful at all. So I've chosen just a few of them to talk through. I have, as you can see behind me, and I do hope you can see it, but I will be reading through them and going through the points as we go along. So I've chosen just a few to go through. These are some of the more common myths. So the first one, and excuse me, I've got to turn around. So myth number one, you will start the menopause at 50. Now it's not true. Now 50 is not a magic number when it comes to menopause. Women do start menopause at different ages. On average it's between 45 and 55 years of age, but there can always be other factors that mean you may start the menopause earlier, for example. So if you've had obviously surgery such as a hysterectomy, you could be a lot younger when you have the surgery and therefore you can go into menopause at an earlier age. And some women just naturally start menopause at a later age. So 50 isn't a magic number. We're all individual, and for some women medical intervention can alter the age that they go into menopause. It's medically induced, I suppose that's probably the best way to put it. So if they'd gone through it naturally, in the sense that their own body got to that point, it would be a completely different age. So it's not true. 50 is not a magic number. You don't necessarily hit 50 and wow, that's it, you know, you're starting to get symptoms, you're going through the menopause process. So point two, the menopause will make you fat. Now, while it is true that once you start going through the perimenopause and your body's changing quite a lot, your hormone levels are changing, your digestion can be playing you up, you are more likely in most instances to find putting on weight a lot easier than you used to. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get fat. It does just mean that you will have to work a little harder with your exercise and be more careful with your diet. It's not an automatic thing. You're not going to start going through menopause and just automatically get fat and that's it and that's hard luck. That's not true. It does mean that you are more likely to put on weight, and like I say, you're perhaps going to have to work that little bit harder to keep the weight off and to keep yourself nice and trim and comfortable, whatever is comfortable for you, of course. And then number three, you will lose your sex drive. Wow. Yes, it's true that a lot of women do lose their sex drive once their hormone levels start changing. Not all women do. In fact, some women find that they have an increased sex drive once their hormone levels start fluctuating. Also, a lot of women find that once they've actually gone through and they're in their post-menopause years, that their sex drive, if they've lost it, tends to come back. Some women find that their sex drive doesn't change at all, but it really isn't unusual to find a decrease in your sex drive. It's not always necessarily hormonal changes either at this stage of your life. If you have been in the same relationship with the same partner for many, many years, sometimes it's just, you know, the lack of excitement, it's over familiarity. It could even be relationship problems, which when you get to your middle years, sometimes just come to a point where things really are dying down when it comes to bedroom activities. So it's not always necessarily hormonal changes, but it is true that the changes in your hormone levels can reduce your sex drive, but it's not inevitable. Doesn't mean it'll happen, doesn't mean that your sex drive won't come back. So let me go on to number four, which is a hot flush is going to be the first symptom that you're going to have. That's going to let you know you're starting to go through menopause. So once you go into your perimenopause phase, the first thing you're going to notice is you're going to have a hot flush. Now, hot flushes are really They're probably the most recognised and probably the most common symptom. I think around about 75 to 80% of women will suffer with hot flushes and night sweats. But not all women do, and not all women have loads of them to the point where they become a nuisance. It's quite common actually for sleep disturbance to be one of the first things that women notice, that their sleep patterns get disrupted, or even their digestion as well. And if your digestion's disrupted, that can actually affect your sleep. So while you may end up getting hot flushes, it's not necessarily the first symptom that you're going to notice. So you can't assume, oh well, until I get a hot flush then I'm not actually going through the menopause. It really doesn't work like that. So then the next thing we've got is the age that you start your periods determines whether you're going to have an earlier or later menopause. So if you're the first girl in the class to start your periods or the last girl in the class to start your periods, then that will determine whether or not you're going to start going through the menopause earlier or later. That is definitely not true. Now, apart from medical intervention, as I mentioned earlier, which can determine or trigger off a menopause that has been medically induced, a standard, what you'd call natural menopause, is not determined at what age you actually started your periods. It's actually determined by the amount of eggs that you were born with. Some women are born with more than others. So depending on your store of eggs, that is the thing that actually determines whether or not you start your menopause earlier or later. The more eggs you've got, the longer you're going to continue to have periods for, and the longer it's going to be before you actually experience menopause symptoms. So it is down to how many eggs you were born with, and none of us know how many eggs we were born with. So you'll have absolutely no idea at what age you're going to start going through menopause. Now this last one, that you don't need contraception during perimenopause, is actually a very dangerous one. While your periods will fluctuate a lot during perimenopause, and you may get months and months of not having a period, doesn't mean you don't need contraception. Just because your periods are erratic doesn't mean that you can't get pregnant. So you always need to use contraception until you are told otherwise by your doctor. So the average rule is, if your periods have stopped for 1 year if you're over 50, 2 years if you're under 50, it is a general guideline. But when it comes to contraception, you should always confirm it with your doctor. Otherwise you might be getting an addition to your family later on in life that you probably weren't planning for. Now there are loads of menopause myths, so if you are told things that sound a little odd or a little frightening, it's worth doing a bit of research. Make sure you always get your information from reliable sources though, because as I say, there's lots of scare stories and things going on. But yeah, menopause is a time where you're told all sorts of stuff, so I thought it might be useful bust a few of the myths, particularly the more common ones. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it interesting. If you'd like to know when more videos are going on the channel, there's a notification bell below the video. There's also a subscribe button there too if you'd like to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.